Okay, and then I'm going to put the spotlight on me. Welcome to Trail Talk. My name is John St. Clair, and I'm one of the Trail Talk committee members, and I am your Zoom host for tonight's Trail Talk. I also happen to be the speaker. And tonight's topic is Glacier and Waterton Lakes National Parks. And it originally was scheduled to be our national monuments, America's hidden gems. But unfortunately, the speaker had a conflict come up, and that topic has now been switched to next month on March 16th. And I volunteered to fill in the slot with my talk. So as your Zoom host, I need to go over the rules here. Everybody should be muted and remain muted. If you have a question, write your questions in the chat section. Now, if you're not sure where that is, at the bottom of your screen, there's a little talking bubble icon with the word chat. And if you click on it, it opens up a screen, at least on my computer, on the lower right-hand side, and you just type the message there for everyone. And that'll be monitored by Julianne, which I just remembered I need to make the co-host. So Julianne is now the co-host. And those questions will be relayed to me at various times during the talk. And then when I'm all done, you could still type them in there, or you can turn on your video and your audio, and we'll just carry on a conversation and I'll answer your questions at the end. So let's see. Oh, so this is being recorded, and I will post the video on the San Gorgonio chapter YouTube channel within 24 hours. And the reminder message that I sent out to everybody who is registered has the link to that YouTube channel in it. At the end, I may paste that in. In fact, maybe I could do that now. Let's see. Okay, I pasted in the link to the YouTube channel in the chat section, but it also is in the email reminder I sent out. So I think that covers just about everything. And if I forgot anything, I'm sure Julianne will fill in for me. At this point, I want to introduce Julianne Anderson, who will fill in anything I missed and also introduce me.
Right. Yes. John, thank you. And welcome everybody to our February Trail Talk. I'm Julianne Anderson, one of the committee members, along with John and Carla Kellums and Marianne Reese. And welcome. Just a couple of little highlights. As John mentioned, tonight we're discussing a wonderful program that John has prepared about Glacier and Waterton National Parks. And talk about timely, as I mentioned to John, I'm going to be there over Memorial Day, so he couldn't have timed it better. What had been this month's program will be next month, as John mentioned, on QT Luong, the photographer's beautiful new book on our national monuments. Just stunning. If you haven't seen it, pull it up on Amazon or from your local bookstore. It is a beautiful, beautiful national park or national monuments text, and it's a companion to QT Luong's prior book on treasured lands or national parks, which was an award-winning text on photography on the national parks. So that will be on the third Wednesday of next month. That being said, let me introduce our wonderful speaker, John St. Clair, our colleague. John is a Los Serranos group outings leader with the Sierra Club San Gorgonio chapter and a member of the Trail Talk committee, and has been for our entire tenure, which is now going on 2 years just about. He did 5 hikes in Glacier and Waterton Lakes National Parks in July of 2019 and took many beautiful photos, which he will share in the presentation. John's very modest in his a little workup of his biography. He focused just on this, but he is a retired elementary school teacher, veteran of many years of teaching, and he is a wonderful storyteller and highly involved in the Inland Valleys storytelling group. And if you've ever been on a hike with John and he breaks out into a story, you are in for a treat. So we are delighted to have him present on Glacier and Waterton. And with that, John, take it away.
Okay, I'll remove the spotlight there and move the spotlight back to me. And then I will share my screen. Okay, I'll have to do one other thing here. There, and now I can start it. So in July, and it was end of July, starting July 24th was the first hike. I was with a group of 6 people, and we did 5 hikes, 4 in Glacier and 1 in Waterton. Glacier National Park in Montana and Waterton Lakes National Park in Alberta, Canada, combined in 1932 to create the world's first international peace park, bringing the United States and Canada, bringing together United States and Canada with the beauty and serenity of the Rocky Mountains. And this map, the green part is the 2 parks, and you can see the border between Montana and Alberta is a nice straight line about 3/4 up. Glacier National Park is much bigger than Waterton National Park. Now they share some things. There's a dotted line that goes it starts in the lower right-hand corner and goes all the way through Glacier and up through the edge of Waterton and beyond. That is the Continental Divide. And I actually hiked along the Continental Divide on one of the hikes. And the other thing that's shared is Waterton Lake. The southern part of Waterton Lake is in Glacier National Park, and the northern part of Waterton Lake is in Waterton Lakes National Park. And you can enter Canada by boat on that lake. The year we were there, it was closed. It was not an option. There had been a fire in the area the year before, and so that wasn't an option, but it's not something we wanted to do anyway. We drove into Canada and then went over to Waterton. So while I have this map up here, I want to talk about where the hikes are. The first 2 hikes are in the Many Glaciers region. And you'll see kind of in the middle in dark letters right above Glacier National Park, it says Glacier National Park. Now, the words are in the middle, but the black box for the area is actually in the eastern part of the park. And that's where Many Glaciers area is. And we did our first 2 hikes there. And then the next hike, we went down to Logan Pass and started a hike there. And that's a little more to the middle and further south. And the 4th hike was way down south and east at Two Medicine. You'll see that in the lower right part of the park. You'll see the word Two Medicine. We did a hike there. And then the last hike was in the town of Waterton. We took a boat ride from Waterton across the lake to the trailhead and did our final hike there. Okay, so a couple of things. I'll start with the glacier hikes. Couple of facts that I researched. Temperatures in Glacier National Park have risen 2.4 degrees Fahrenheit since 1900, nearly twice the global average. According to the U.S. Geological Survey, of the 150 lakers in 1850, only 25 remain. 11 of the park's named glaciers have melted away since 1966. Now, Glacier National Park put up signs about 15 years ago saying its signature glaciers would be gone by 2020. Well, it didn't happen, and that was embarrassing. So in January 2020, the park announced it would be replacing those signs and not predict an exact date when the glaciers will be gone. They will be gone. They are shrinking. but it's hard. There are a lot of factors involved. It's hard to predict exactly when they will disappear. And there actually is a stage that can make them last longer when it gets mixed up with rocks, and they can stay around for a little bit longer. Okay, so the first two hikes are in the Many Glacier area, and this is a map of all the hiking trails. They are the dotted lines. And our first hike was to Iceberg Lake, which you'll see kind of off to the left a little, but in the middle, as far as up and down, you'll see the picture of Iceberg Lake, number 6. And the second one was Grinnell Glacier, which is way down at the bottom. And both of those hikes start in the Many Glacier area. And it has an enlargement area, and that's up near the top, and that shows both trailheads. It shows the Iceberg trailhead and the Grinnell Glacier trailhead. They're only about a mile apart. We stayed in the Swift Current Motor Inn, which is actually the end of the road as you drive into that area. It does not go past Swift Current Motor Inn. The other place you can stay at is Many Glacier Hotel, which is beautiful, but much, much more expensive. And we were trying to do it on the cheap. And the Swift Current Motor Inn was fine. It was adequate for us. Now, looking back down to the main map, you will see that within that enlarged area is Swift Current Lake, and below it is Lake Josephine, and below that is Grinnell Lake. We hiked all the way along. You'll see the dotted line just go along the side there, along the side of the first two, and then we went up more and a little further away from Grinnell Lake, all the way down to Grinnell Glacier. Okay, so first hike, well, here's what the Swift Current Motor Inn looked like. And it, both in Montana and Canada, they had these baskets of flowers hanging at all the motels. It was really very pretty. Now you have to remember, we went end of July. So things were blooming, and gosh, that was the big surprise for me. You know, I thought, oh, Glacier National Park, fantastic glaciers. Actually, the glaciers that we saw were smaller than the Palisade Glacier in the Sierra Nevadas. They were really small. There's not much left of the glaciers, but the flowers were absolutely spectacular. Now, notice above the Swift Current Motor Inn sign, you'll see the ridge line up there. This building we're looking at is where we checked in. There was a nice cafeteria that opened very early for breakfast, so we could eat there early and get a good start on our hike. So there was a little store on the other end of the building where you could buy things like toothpaste and chapstick or whatever else you forgot. And then behind this, after we checked in, we got back in our cars and drove behind, and we stayed in this building off to the right. That's one of our cars parked there. And this is the view we had. It was just spectacular. And the first hike, we did not drive to. The first hike, we walked to the edge of the Swift Current Motor Inn parking area, and about 100 feet further was the trailhead. So it was really, really close. And this was the sign, Iceberg Lake. 4.9 miles, it says there, but you know, we did maybe a 1/10 of a mile to get to it. So I'm saying 10 miles round trip, because that 4.9 is one way. So 10 miles round trip, 1,200 feet elevation climb. Not real steep, and not real strenuous at all. But lots and lots of beautiful views. It was a kind of a cloudy day, and it was windy, and it was cold, especially when the sun went behind the clouds. It got pretty cold with the wind. But just gorgeous area, and everything's green. We passed by a stream. And this was the big surprise. I had never heard of bear grass. And it kind of looks like a bunch of Q-tips sticking up. a thin stalk with a white bulb on the top. Beargrass is the common name, and that name comes from observations that bears like to eat the young fleshy stems, and grizzly bears reportedly have been known to use beargrass leaves in winter dens during hibernation. This is a beargrass flower close up. Native Americans have long used beargrass for a variety of purposes. Leaves were used for basket weaving, leaf fibers for clothing, and the rhizomes roasted for food. Eastern prairie tribes boiled the roots for a hair tonic and the treatment for sprains. Elk and deer forage on the flower stalks. Now, there were other flowers as well. I don't know what these were called, but there were lots of beautiful flowers along the trail. Now, this is where we're headed. That's the glacier off in the distance there. And you can see my fellow hikers are off on the right edge of the screen there, and more beargrass sticking up. And the beargrass was all over the place. It was amazing. And I took many, many more pictures than I'm going to show you. I just couldn't get over it. It was just gorgeous. And I love this picture because it has the beargrass and it has the glacier in the background. Here's a close-up of some. Here's some other flowers. And now we're getting a little bit closer. More flowers. A close-up of a not fully opened beargrass flower. I thought that was rather interesting looking. Now we can see the lake, the iceberg lake at the base of the glacier. Not much of the glacier left. Beautiful water. It was crystal clear. You could see the bottom of the lake. It was windy. You see the white caps there and the waves. So all the icebergs were being blown to, and notice I have my windbreaker on, blown to one side of the lake. And iceberg is, I was thinking they'd be bigger. They were like not really large icebergs. They were very small icebergs, and the glacier is very small, but still pretty. Now off to the right, along these cliffs, we were able to see some animals. So on the way back, we kept our eyes open, and sure enough, I saw little specks on the side, and I used my zoom on my camera. Can you see the bighorn sheep there in the right-hand side, kind of lower middle right-hand side? There's a herd of bighorn sheep. They're hard to see because they blend into the color of the ground. But when they got on the snow, they showed up better on the white snow. Turned around, looked back again at the beautiful lake and cliffs. And then went further and we saw some white mountain goats. Again, they were just specks from the trail, but I used my zoom on my camera to zoom in on them so we could see what they were. And walking back, I took lots of pictures. I zoomed in on this deer that was off the path. I wasn't standing this close, but I got a nice shot of this deer. And when we got back to the parking lot, the alpine glow on the hill was just gorgeous. Okay, second hike, next day, Grinnell Glacier Trailhead. And it goes right along the three lakes, the Swift Current Lake, the Lake Josephine, and the Grinnell Lake, and then ends up, the upper Grinnell Lake is at the base of the glacier. And this glacier was larger than the other one, but still not huge. It's a 10.6 mile round trip, 1,600 feet elevation. A lot of it was pretty level along the lakes. And then we did some serious climbing for a little while. So this is the Swift Current Lake. We're walking along the side of it. And way back in the distance, you can barely see it, is the Many Glaciers Hotel. I'll have a better shot of it later. I didn't zoom in here. This is Lake Josephine. We passed it. And notice it was a windy day. You can see the waves on the water. and this sign, warning, bear frequenting area. So we all bought, once we arrived, we actually flew into Calgary, Canada, and bought bear spray because you can't take it on the airplane. And we left it in Canada after visiting Waterton Lakes National Park. But we all had the bear spray just in case, never had to use it, thank goodness. We saw a black bear once. We heard people yelling and screaming ahead of us on this trail here, the Grinnell Glacier Trail. We couldn't see them because they were around the bend. Apparently a bear, and they didn't know which it was, was running uphill and ran right across the trail in front of them and scared them, but no one was hurt. That's the Grinnell Glacier up ahead. That's where we're heading. And I don't know if you can see it, just above the trees in the middle, there's a twin waterfall, two streams of water coming down. I'm going to zoom in so you can see it better. So there in the lower part of the screen are the two parts of the waterfall. And then if you go up higher, you see the glacier, and there's a single waterfall coming out of the glacier. That's back in the distance there, back behind the ridge. That's Grinnell Lake, and notice it has that classic glacier lake look to it, that amazing color. There's Grinnell again. And here I believe this is the one where I start with this picture and then we move. Actually, we started with this one. You can see the mountain behind, and now you can't. And now we're going over, we see the other end of the lake, and now you can see the waterfall again. And now we're leaving it behind, and there was bear grass here too. Now this is a waterfall we had to walk behind. The trail comes in at the bottom. We go behind that water coming down, and we all got wet. And then you, off the screen, you climb up the side. Well, I guess it may be right there next to the fall. You climb up and you see someone standing up there on the right-hand side. We had to go back up to the trail there. And finally, we arrived, Grinnell Glacier. I like the fact someone put discovered in quotes. In 1887 by George Bird Grinnell, covers approximately 300 acres. Someone crossed out the last zero, so it said only 30. I think it was less than 30 when we saw it. It has really, really shrunk. And it says, caution, do not go out onto the glacier alone. Keep crevices. Deep crevices are often hidden by thin snow bridges. There's no worry about that. The glacier is receded so far, you can't even get to it. There's this big lake in front of it. There's no place to walk out onto it. It's so small. So there it is. The main glacier is up the top. And there's the lake at the base with ice floating around on it. Very beautiful, beautiful, and cold. There's the four people who did this hike. The other two people in our group took a boat ride on Swift Current Lake, did a short hike to Lake Josephine, and took another boat ride there. They weren't big hikers. So if you get to see part of the beauty without the exercise, if that's what you rather do. I happen to like the exercise. So here we are looking down. There are the three lakes. First the Grinnell, then the Lake Josephine, and then Swift Current Lake is the lowest one. And beautiful vistas, just beautiful. There's Grinnell again. And the wind was whipping around and creating the different colors on the lake. And we went through bear grass again, of course. Here's looking down at that other waterfall. Now, here we are at Swift Current Lake. You can see the Many Glaciers Hotel a little bit better here. And then I zoomed in with my camera, and that's what it looks like. Beautiful place. If you have unlimited disposable income, that's the place to stay, but it's definitely expensive. Now, when we got back at the trailhead, we got in our cars and we drove up about a half mile to the Many Glacier Hotel parking lot. And this picture was taken from the parking lot. So this is the other side of that hotel. And we walked out onto the deck, and this is the view from the deck of the Many Glacier Hotel. Isn't that gorgeous? Just beautiful. And that's the Swift Current Lake. We went inside and we had dinner. And it was a gorgeous place, very expensive dinner, but very good. And celebrated the fact we had done a pretty long and successful hike. Okay, third hike, Logan Pass. Oh, I forgot to mention the elevation. Here it shows here. That's one thing I didn't realize. We were never hiking at really high elevation. Grinnell Lake was just a little bit, Grinnell Glacier was about this same elevation, maybe a little bit less than Logan Pass. So, our San Gabriel Mountains, we hike higher than that. I believe Wrightwood's probably 7,000 feet. So not real high elevation, but of course you're much further in the Northern Hemisphere, and so they do get the snow. So this was an interesting hike and just a gorgeous hike. We took the Highland Trail, doing the so-called Highline Loop. So you start at Logan Pass, round trip. Well, that's kind of funny because it isn't round trip, but 11.8 miles, total elevation gain, 1,950 feet. That's because you go down and go back up again. It's, you only go up a little, I think about 600 feet above Logan. Highest elevation is 7,280. So I guess that's 700 feet above Logan almost. It was strenuous. The Highland Loop in Glacier National Park begins from the north side of the Going to the Sun Road at Logan Pass. Although this hike includes the word loop in its name, it's actually a one-way hike. The loop refers to a bend in the road on the west side of the park where this hike ends. The best way to do this hike is to park at the loop, located 13.1 miles east of McDonald Lodge on Going to the Sun Road, then take the free shuttle up to Logan Pass. So that's what we did. We had to go early because parking is limited there. So we parked our cars at that parking lot, took the shuttle up to Logan Pass, and then hiked all the way back down to get our cars. The Highland Trail is extremely popular hiking for good reason. At every step, every turn, hikers will enjoy spectacular scenery as the High Line follows along the Continental Divide, also known as the Garden Wall, through this section of Glacier National Park. The exceptionally beautiful views, excellent opportunities for spotting wildlife, and the wildflowers all combine to make this a hike you'll remember the rest of your life. If you're looking for solitude, however, you won't find it on this trail. Very popular trail, very heavily traveled. So we start out from Logan Pass, and it's kind of level. It's not much elevation change. It's green with beautiful flowers. And then we hit this section, the Garden Wall. And they nicely put a guardrail there to hang on to. If you're afraid of heights, this could be a little scary. It gets narrow in places, and it's a pretty long drop off in some places. So if you're afraid of heights, you'll probably be hanging onto the guardrail. Down below is the Going to the Sun Road. And you can see we're actually going down at this point. That's why the total elevation change was so high, is because you go down and then you have to go back up. Lots of flowers along the way. And then you finally get up to a kind of a saddle or pass, and there was snow there. And I got across there first, and I was waiting for my friends, and it was hard to see. I thought they were coming, so I zoomed in, and there we were. There's Gary and Kathy. And they were walking across that snow. There was a path made through it. And then we went down after that a little bit. So we had to regain that later. And here we see bear grass. And can you see the bighorn sheep along the rocks on the green grass? If you look closely, I zoomed in and got a great shot. It's like this bighorn sheep was posing for me. I just love the way his head is held high, and look at those horns. They were just fantastic. And the bear grass in the foreground. So after going down, then we had to go back up again, of course. And we were heading to a special place. This was the Vista Point, a nice Vista Point with me and Kathy and Terry Lynn. There were 4 of us doing this: Kathy, Terry Lynn, me, and Gary. And we were going to the Granite Park Chalet, which was built by the railroad company, I believe, as a place for people to stay, workers to stay. And it's still used. It's very rustic. This is what it looks like. No electricity. They do have propane tanks in a common kitchen and rustic little rooms to sleep in. So you can spend a night there if you make reservations. And then from there, it was all downhill to get back to our cars. And this was the most unpleasant part. There were some pretty flowers, but the trees were mostly gone. It was a forest regenerating after a bad fire. So there was no shade, and it was warm and sunny in the afternoon, no clouds on this day. And so it got a little bit hot. At this point, I turned around and took a picture of the chalet looking back up. Okay, that's the end of that one. And I've talked about 3 lakes. Are there any questions I need to answer in the chat?
There are a few, John.
Okay, well, why don't I stop here just a moment to answer a few questions before going on?
Yeah, people wanted to know in the first hike, what elevation was that?
So
And
that
what
was not as high. That was probably I would guess about between 5,500 and 5,500 feet. Certainly not over 6,000, but I would guess maybe 5,500 feet was the high point.
And when you said when it got a little bit cool, what do you mean by cool? Was it 50? Was it 40? What kind of temps were you looking at there on the cool day?
Well, they were cloudy, and when the sun went behind, it felt cold because it was windy. But I would guess probably the temperature is about 55.
Okay.
Which is not actually, I mean, it's nice hiking weather. But when the wind picked up and the sun was behind the clouds, it felt colder than 55.
Okay. And this was late July or mid-July?
Starting July 24th. It was the first, the 24th, the 25th, 26th, 27th.
Okay. And tell us about your camera. Your photos are just stunning.
So I have a Canon camera, and it has a 30 times optical zoom, and that's the best feature of that camera. And actually, all the photos in Glacier were taken with the Canon, I think. I normally use my iPhone for most things, but if certainly for zoom, the Canon was much better, and it fits in my pocket. It's a heavy fit, but it was well worth carrying it for the zoom shots.
Right. Norm notes that Mount Baden-Powell in Wrightwood is 9,300 feet.
Yeah. Yeah, we never got anywhere near that. The high point was 7,280.
Right. Well, that's about it.
Okay.
Now.
All right. So the 4th hike was in the Two Medicine area, the southeastern part of the park. And we pieced together some trails. These are the trails in that area. 2 of them, the Old Man Lake up the top says Trailhead, North Shore Trailhead, And the bottom one says Twin Falls, also North Shore Trailhead. We sort of pieced those together, and I don't know what else. I didn't plan the hike, but it ended up being a fairly long hike, almost no climbing, very, very little elevation gain or loss, because we basically were going around a lake, and lakes are level. We had to go up a little bit to get to the Twin Falls, but not much. So this shows the trails. There's a number of trails. So up in the upper left-hand part, you'll see that's where the trailhead, the North Trailhead is. And you'll see Old Man Lake. We have a picture taken by the sign next to that, near to that. And then we went down. You'll see on the left, you'll see 3.4. So we went down that dotted line, 3.4 miles, and then over, and 1.9, 1.5. We got to Twin Falls, went 4/10 up to Twin Falls. And then we just sort of walked slightly above Two Medicine Lake all the way, and made a loop out of it. Ended up going back to the other side, going back north. So, and the gains weren't much. It was mostly level, especially along the lake. So this is the North Shore Trail. And there are two old men standing next to Old Man Lake sign. So this is Two Medicine Lake, really pretty, really, really pretty, surrounded by various mountains. And one of those is Mount Sinapa, and I'm not sure which one it is. Here's the group. We had all 6 of us doing this one. The 2 of our group did not want to do the strenuous hikes, but this was not that strenuous. It was a little bit long, but it wasn't really strenuous. And this is the Twin Falls. Another picture of Two Medicine Lake.
Oh.
And we went across this rickety suspension bridge, one person at a time. And boy, when you were walking, it wobbled. And we passed a pond that had a beaver home in it, a beaver lodge. I thought that was pretty cool. We didn't get to see the beaver, but that was pretty cool to see that. Yeah. Okay, so that's the end of that one. So then the next day we drove up into Canada and over to Waterton Lakes National Park. And here's the little plaza thing where they have the sign about the International Peace Park in the town of Waterton, a nice little town. Very quaint. So up at the top is the Prince of Wales Hotel, which I will talk about later because we went up there and went inside. Also probably pretty pricey to stay at. We stayed at a little motel. We did not stay in the expensive hotel again. And there's 3 of us, I believe. Kathy's taking this picture because she's not in it. 2 of the group took a boat tour of Waterton Lake, and they probably went all the way down into the United States because the lake does go down into Glacier National Park. So they spent their day mostly on the water. We took this little ferry across the lake to a trailhead. And there's the 4 of us that did this hike. Terry, Lynn, Gary, Kathy, and me. And very green and pretty here. Lots of flowers. But it was an unusual hike. So we get to this point, and I don't know if you can tell, but the trail is not real wide, and it's kind of cut into the rock on a slope, very steep slope. And then you get to this place where you have to climb a ladder to go up into a tunnel, which is 4 feet high. Now, I was wearing a backpack. Some of the young kids weren't, or they just had a fanny pack or whatever. but I had my trekking poles with me and I stuck them into the backing pack. So they stuck up higher. There's no way I was going to go through there on 2 feet. So I crawled through the tunnel, climbed the ladder, crawled through the tunnel. When I got to the top, I turned around and took a picture of the trail that led to the tunnel.
Dang.
And then on the other side, you had, it was even scarier. And you had a cable to help you, but notice how low the cable is. I mean, I have to be on my hands and knees to use that cable. It was never higher than waist high. And at times I would grab onto the cable and just hold onto it. It was very loose. I mean, you could lift it up. But I'm afraid of heights, and this was scary for me. In fact, I bought a shirt when we got back that said, I survived the Crypt Lake hike, because that's what we were heading towards, the Crypt Lake. I got across there, and this is Crypt Lake, and it was gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous. And I didn't get any pictures of them because they were moving, but there were bald eagles circling up above, and that was really cool. And there's the 4 of us. Here we are coming back down that cable area. Now here it's a little bit higher. You see, Kathy's standing upright, holding on. I'm sort of leaning into the side of the cliff because I do not like heights and sharp drop-offs. And I certainly didn't look over the edge to see how far I would fall if I fell. That's Terry Lynn, and then Kathy, and then me hugging the hill. And then you had to climb up to get into the tunnel on this side. No ladder, you just climbed up the rocks to get into the tunnel. And then on the other side, you climb down the ladder after you get through the tunnel. Quite an interesting hike, not your ordinary hike. And it was a beautiful trail with beautiful views and lots of flowers. But by this time, I had taken so many pictures of flowers. I didn't take as many pictures now. So you're not going to get to see, but it looks like there's some bear grass right on the right edge of this photo. So I think they had the bear grass also. So we got back, we showered, and then we drove over to the Prince of Wales Hotel. It was constructed in 1926, 27. It actually had been started earlier, but was destroyed, and they had to start over again. It's very beautiful, both inside and outside. That's what it looks like outside. Here we are standing, posing. And then we turned around, and that's what it looks like the other way. There's Lake Waterton, or Waterton Lake. Beautiful view. And then inside, you can see the view through the glass windows. Again, if I had lots of money, I'd love to stay in that place. It would have been nice. But the motels we stayed in were quite adequate and much cheaper. So then we had to drive. Whoops, what happened? Oh, I thought I had another slide. Okay, I'll just have to talk about it. Then we had to drive back up to Calgary and take the flight home, but we had these bear spray things that you can't take on the plane. And there was a place in the town of Waterton where you could hand them in. And I don't know if we got any money for them. I mean, we never used them, but they couldn't sell them as brand new because they were previously owned. We may have just given them to the store. And I need to get stop share. And at this point, I can answer other questions if people have them.
John, people were wondering about ID and getting into Canada. What kind of customs experience did you have? And this is pre-pandemic in 2019, right?
Right, it was pre-pandemic, so it was not a problem at all. Of course, we had to have our passports, but that's all. It was not a problem at all.
Okay.
And we flew on, oh shoot, what's the name of the airline? I just got a message from them, but I think I erased it. It was not a US carrier. It was a Canadian carrier that flies out of Palm Springs.
Mm.
So we rented a car and drove into Palm Springs and turned the car in at the airport there and got on the plane. Then when we got back, we rented a car again to drive back in a big van, the 6 of us all in one vehicle.
Right. Right. I'm curious if anyone in the group here has traveled to Canada during the pandemic, if they used, I think they've got an app, it's called ArriveCan. And if anybody, what experiences have been with that? Has anyone used that in the last couple of years? Let's see. Nope. I think it's you have to put up you have to upload your vaccination information and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Anyway, and where did you stay in Waterton?
So we stayed in and I don't remember the name. It was a little motel right in Waterton. Quite nice. I don't remember the name and I didn't have any photos of it, unfortunately.
Right.
And Waterton is a nice little town. They have little gift shops and ice cream shops, and of course we ate in the restaurants, and they were good.
Yeah, good. The other question we had, talk about the you talked about the crowdedness of the ladder hike or one of your ladder hikes. Overall, how would the crowds compare to what we're used to in the San Bernardinos, San Gabriels, and the Sierra? Was it much different?
There were a lot of people on all of the hikes except the Two Medicine hike. The Two Medicine hike did not have very many people on it. It's not as well, there were no glaciers to look at.
Right.
It's not as popular, so that we saw very few people on that hike. The other hikes were fairly crowded. I mean, it would be like a weekend in the San Gabriels, not as bad as Icehouse Canyon can get. That gets really crowded on Saturdays and Sundays, and not quite as crowded as Yosemite. But yeah, there were a lot of people on the trails. The nice thing about the Highland Trail, it's basically a one-way trail. It was 7.6 miles to get to that chalet, which was like the high point, or very near the high point. It was over 7,000. I think actually we reached the high point and then went down to the chalet a couple hundred feet, but it's 7.6 miles to get there. And most people don't turn around and go back the other way. So there wasn't the crowdedness you get on Icehouse at a certain point where you have people going both directions on a narrow trail. And you didn't have that because most people did what we did. They did the shuttle. So they just made it a one-way trip. And it was only from the chalet down to where we parked our car for the shuttle bus was only about 5 miles, rather than turn around and go, back to Logan Pass would be another 7.6 miles.
Another question came in. Were you concerned about bears? I mean, you got the spray, but it sounds like they were present.
Yeah, well, the thing about bears, so yeah, we did get the bear spray, but because we were on crowded trails, I think it scared the bears away. There was only, when we got back from the Grinnell Glacier hike, there was a bear, it was a black bear that was off, not too far off the trail, rummaging around. And then the other one, we didn't see it, so I don't know what kind of bear it was that scared the people. But, with that many people traveling on the trail, it kind of scares the bears away. That's the one plus. of being on a well-traveled trail. If you're on a remote trail and you're around the bend and there's a bear using that trail too, because not many people go on it, that's probably scarier.
Right, right. Another question, John, just in terms of kid friendliness, which of these areas, um, either the trails you took or perhaps some that you didn't, would you recommend for families with kids, um, and perhaps families with people that maybe weren't into the 7 or 10 mile hikes, but something a little more serene, a little shorter. So, what are your recommendations for family friendly hikes?
Well, the easiest hike that we do is probably the Iceberg Lake one, because there wasn't much elevation climb. And so I think that was doable. There were some kids that were on that hike. The other thing is there were some smaller hikes out of there. There was a small lake not too far from where we were staying, and we walked over there and saw lots and lots of deer. And that would be something that would be very easy for kids to do. There are a number of lakes there and trails. And then the Two Medicine one had a number, I mean, in order to make it a long hike, we had to piece together several different hikes because they were shorter hikes. So that would be a possible one that would be fine for kids too.
And I seem to remember I was last in Glacier in 2019. I think we were just there a little bit before you in June, but that that visitor center at Logan Pass, I think, is fairly new, and that's pretty family friendly. It was like something out of James Bond. It was like your mountain redoubt, as I recall. Really a stunning
Yeah,
view.
it was multi-story with
Yeah,
beautiful photos and displays. Yeah, very nice visitor center there.
yeah, gorgeous at Logan Pass there. So, wow, John, what a show! What a wonderful presentation. Um, uh, so glad that you were able to take all the good shots and share them with us. I I'm really looking forward to my trip over Memorial Day, and looks like you just had a ball. You know,
Yeah, it was a wonderful trip, a wonderful trip.
yeah, yeah,
And as I mentioned to you, uh, that was only part of the trip. The first part of the trip was at Banff National Park, and maybe sometime I can do a slideshow about Banff.
yes. How do you compare? How does Waterton compare to Banff?
Well, as far as spectacular glaciers and views, Banff was much better.
Mm.
Um, when the hike we took uh, in Banff, we heard the glaciers moaning and groaning as they were moving. I mean, it was impressive, and
Wow.
they were much bigger up there. It's
Yeah.
it's further north,
Yeah. Way up there.
and
Way
and
up.
we actually got to see an avalanche, which I took a picture of.
Oh, wow. Oh, wow.
So and the oh, what's the name of the lake there? Name escapes me. That was it. The views were spectacular in Banff. It was just gorgeous.
Yeah.
One of
Lake
the
Louise.
Lake Louise, yeah, one of the most beautiful lakes I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah.
Have
Wow.
you been there, Lori?
Wow, because this is pretty.
I have, yes.
Yeah, Lake Louise is just gorgeous.
Yeah. So worth another presentation, John.
And hopefully, I hope to go back up there
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
do Banff and whatever the name of the other park is that's just north of it.
Lake Louise is interesting in the winter because it freezes over solid. And they celebrate there.
Yeah, I imagine it would freeze over.
Yeah. Isn't that near Jasper? Is Jasper the other park?
Yeah, Jasper's the other park.
Yeah. Interesting. So all that Canadian Rocky. Well, we'll definitely want you to talk about Banff. Although what you showed us was so stunning from the Waterton area and Glacier. It's hard to beat. So just stunning. So thank you, John. Thanks for everything. You've brought it in under an hour. So
Yep.
nice going.
And I think at this point, I may stop the recording.